Hi and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to carry on looking at this build of the IP Engineering Shelley Tram loco kit, which I'm going to be building as Toby the Tram Engine from the Thomas and Friends. If you remember from last week, I got as far as actually putting the body together. Loco's a bit big to get under the camera, but if you remember, you go back and look at the other video, you can see I can't get it under the camera. We've discussed this. I haven't fixed that problem with my tripod setup yet, but yeah, the body's together, so I've moved on to looking at the roof, which I can get under the camera, although it's still big. So essentially the kit came with the piece of preformed aluminium for the roof, but none of the holes, mounting fixtures, etc. Were drilled. So there's a handy-ish diagram that shows the roof and all the mounting holes and things. There are a couple of holes here and here which are for, in theory, screws that hold the roof onto the loco. They go into the solid bar that goes between the two inner end walls. I haven't drilled those because, as I say, as we discussed in the last video, I'm still trying to think about exactly how I'm going to affix the roof. I want to make sure it's easily removable, but I don't necessarily want screws being really visible on the roof. I've tried to get rid of all the, all those kind of things. So I've hidden the on-off switches, and I don't want two big screws on the roof. So we'll come to that. I think there will be magnets involved at some point, but I'm not quite sure how yet. I mean, one of the problems is it'd be nice and easy to fit magnets to the body and then have the roof, clip into place with the magnets. Unfortunately, it's aluminium, so it's not magnetic. So there will have to be some further thinking there, shall we say. But what have I done? So as I say, I've drilled all the holes. We have I think this is described as a steam pipe. I'm assuming to take steam from one place to another outside the loco for some reason. I honestly don't know. We have the chimney, which has a spark arrestor top. So on the real thing, this would be a grill essentially. Lots of vanes, lets the smoke out, but stops the sparks flying out, so you're not likely to set fire to the roadside grass and things like that. And then we have the bell. Now you may notice something of it. Well, let's start with a few things first. This casting didn't really originally have these mounting pins. It was just a flat casting, and it was just suggested that you just glued it onto the roof. I decided that might make it a bit vulnerable to getting knocked, especially if either of my sons are playing with it. Well, not playing, but controlling it or moving it around, etc. So I drilled 2 holes in the roof, 1.5mm holes, some 1.5mm steel rod. These are offcuts from the Hudson Hunslet kit that I do in 009. This is actually the lay shaft for the model, which gives you an idea of kind of how small those models are, which is 1.5mm silver steel rod. But when you cut the rod up to length for the kit, so you cut pieces off to pick up the kits, there's always some little leftover ends. So I've just been using them as mounting pins here. So yeah, the roof was marked up and drilled. The casting had 2 holes drilled in it. These are just super glued in, and that gives a nice positive fixture. Obviously this will then get glued on to the roof at some point. We'll come back to exactly when that's going to happen in a minute. The chimney actually comes with a screw fitting, so that's screwed on, can easily come off. I'm not quite sure why that one was screwed on, the others aren't, but I'm assuming again it's because it's it's quite top heavy, and it's only a thin base to attach to the roof. So I guess they were worried again about this being loose or getting knocked off. So yeah, so the mounting point there. And then the bell. Now you'll notice a bit of a problem here. All the other roof fittings are white metal, and in fact the bell's white metal. And you may have seen in some of the previous videos, if I have a photo and can find one, I'll put one here, but I don't know if I do. There was actually a casting looked similar to this, not quite the same, but similar, in the kit that had the loop, the bell, and 2 little kind of pieces where it joins the roof. It broke. some of it was just the kit, some of it was me. So first of all, I took the piece out of the bag and I was kind of cleaning up some of the mould lines, and the bell fell off. Essentially it was attached just by a tiny little bit at the top to the arch piece on the original piece, and it just fell off. So I did a couple of things. One, I hollowed out the bottom, so you can see this was a solid casting. It was just flat on the bottom, but I've taken a number of different sized drills and hollowed it out so it's more bell-like on the inside, which means if you do look at it ever so slightly from underneath when it's on the loco, it does look like it's difficult to see on this angle, but you can just about see there. You can see inside the bell. It's a bit easier in real life. You can see that it's not solid, so that's a nice improvement. But having done that, I decided I needed to reattach it to the loop that went around the top. Now the problem was it had fallen off because it was such a small piece where the two attached. So I thought the easiest thing was to drill a hole in the top of the bell for another one of those bits of 1.5mm steel rod, drill a hole in the loop, slide the two together, glue it, and it would be fine. And that's exactly what I did, and it was fine until I then started to ever so slightly adjust the loop to get it into the perfect fit on the top of the roof, and I'd obviously weakened it where I drilled through and it just snapped in half. So you can see I've got some leftover bits. It's a bit difficult to see exactly what's going on here because I tried to, you can see this is one half where it's got the base for the roof, and then it's snapped in the middle. I did try and put it back together. I tried to super glue it, I tried to epoxy it, I tried to do some low melt solder. I could not get these parts back together. Yeah, I've no idea why. I mean, my low melt white metal soldering skills are very, very limited. It's like the second time I've ever tried to do anything. And yeah, I just could not get it to work. So my next attempt was to, you can see I'd already fitted this end with a pin on the bottom to locate into the roof in the same way as the steam pipe. So my intention was to cut off the loop and then drill into the top. So I'd have the base, two bases that would be matched the roof line, and then I could put plastic tubing, metal rod, whatever, between the two to make a new one. But I could not sensibly drill this thing in the middle. I tried numerous ways to hold it, doing it by hand. It was a nightmare. The drilling the white metal was a pain in the, yeah, it was a pain. So what I've actually ended up with here is a combination of some 3D printing and some plastic styrene rod. So the first thing I did was I took some of this kind of straight styrene rod. It's, I think, 3mm in diameter. It's a little bigger than the original white metal version, but not hugely. You can just about see them here. It's a little thicker. It's what I had in stock. So I bent this. You can't really bend it as it is. It would snap. But if you, I put it in, I poured some boiling hot water over it, bent it, and then kept it under the hot water for a few minutes while it definitely took the shape, and then put it straight into some cold water, held it there, and when it came out, it had kept the bend quite well. It does spring back a little over time, but not a huge amount. And then what I did was I mocked up a piece of this roof in my 3D printing software, and then have printed, these are a bit difficult to see, but they're essentially little pieces that have the right roof line at the bottom, and then the kind of two-level stack of the original metal. Now these are different. There's one for the bottom, one for the top, because yeah, so that's the one nearest the edge of the roof, that's the one nearest the top of the roof, because obviously the angle of the roof underneath them is different the higher you get up to the top. So here there's a lot more of a drop off than there is here if you're wanting the pipe to come kind of straight up out the roof. So yeah, I bent up the rod, and then I have, you see it springs apart a bit, so I slotted on the end caps, drilled the rod to take the 1.5mm rod. The bell is attached by a bit of wire. Instead of I was going to drill a hole through this plastic tube, but decided the stress again would likely snap it. So piece of wire wrapped round the tube, and then into the hole in the top of the bell, which means that actually the bell will move. I'm not going to make it movable necessarily. I might actually glue it in place, but for now it's movable. And then this just slots into the 2 holes that I'd already drilled. I'd already drilled one of them for the previous version, and I drilled another one to take the other. And you can see that fits pretty well against the roof line. You have to hold it in place for it to fit fully because it's trying to spring itself out a bit. But once I've glued it in, that should be good to go. So the one missing thing is that there is a wire from here to the bell and from here to the bell. From here and here up to the bell, so that obviously it can be rung from inside the kind of cab ends at either end of the tram loco. So I guess the driver would pull on the wire and it would ring the bell. I've not fitted those yet, obviously, because until I paint the roof and things, I don't want anything kind of fixed in place. But that should be easy enough to run the wire up across to here and down to here when I've done. The big thing I'm not yet sure about is how I'm going to paint this. So I think I'm probably going to paint it before I fix everything in place, because I think it'd be easier, certainly easier to do things like painting the bell if it's not fixed on, and things like painting under the pipe, under here, this bit, if it's not fixed to the roof, will be easier. The other thing I have to decide is what I'm doing with the roof. So my guess is that the roof on the original, I need to check this, but my guess is that it wouldn't necessarily have been metal like this. It would possibly have been felted, more like a kind of a wooden wagon roof. At which point I might want to treat this before I paint it. So when I've done felted roofs on a few previous occasions, it's always been in smaller scales. So I did the 09 gunpowder wagon kit that I did. My suggestion in the instructions was to use a very thin piece of toilet paper, the ones without kind of imprinted patterns, glued to the roof, and then painted. Makes it look like the textured kind of asphalt felted roof. The other option in the larger scales, or even in small scales, is masking tape. And you put the masking tape on. You can obviously glue it on as well with some white glue, maybe, so you don't worry about it coming off over time if the glue goes. And then paint the masking tape to make it look more like a felt roof. I mean, I've got some white masking tape here. It's difficult to tell under the camera, but there is a bit of a texture to it. I also have some black masking tape that makes the texture a little easier to see. But I'm guessing that this isn't wide enough, really. I need something. I'd need lots of strips, and I'm thinking that this actually wouldn't be that many strips. I mean, if you see how many, I'm going to need lots of strips if I do it with this tape. So I think if I can find a much wider masking tape, something that's a bit more like parcel tape, so maybe 3 times as much as this, then I could put the masking tape on first to look like a felted roof, and then paint it. So I need to have a think about that. But yeah, I'm quite happy with this now. As I say, it was a bit of a disaster when I first ended up breaking the bell moulding, but I think I've got that coming on quite well. It's a bit oversized, certainly compared with the one in the kit. It's a little bit oversized, and looking at the photo of Toby the Tram Engine on the box of books I have, again, it's a bit oversized. The other one's much thinner, but I'm quite happy with this because I think it's going to last, is the point. It's not going to get easily damaged by being knocked around and moved, which I think is more important in this case, because once I've painted everything and put it together, I don't want it kind of falling apart and breaking. So I think slightly oversized is probably better. So yeah, so that's where we are. Might not look like a lot of progress, but again, actually took quite a while given I broke this one. And you can see you might be able to see, it's a bit difficult with the light, but there was lots of lines drawn on the inside to work out where the middle was, where all the points went to get everything drilled. So it took quite a bit of effort to get that all to come together, but it has all come together, and I'm quite happy with how it looks now. So yeah, with the weather as it is at the moment, we've still got snow on the floor outside and sub-zero temperatures. I have no idea when I'll get to painting, so I'm not quite sure what the next update will be, but I'm hoping to try and again maintain the 1 post a week during the year, rather than having a break until August, which is what happened last year. So fingers crossed, I will be back next week with another video, and if you don't want to miss that, then remember the subscribe button's down here somewhere. Thanks for watching, have a good week.